Encourage you, once you hear what this topic is, to call in, especially if you fit any of these demographics, because we're going to need some opinions here.
Yeah, I think so. So there's this study that is being kicked around, and a lot of news organizations are really latching onto this. We've got 3 that came out this week, one from the New York Post, one from CBS, and one from the New York Times. I'm not going to be surprised if we start seeing
even
like
more
nightly news segments about this kind of shit as well. But there's a story that's been published out of the University of Chicago. Or I'm sorry, this is from a graduation speech from the University of Chicago, and the paper is being released by the National Bureau of Economic Research, and the economists that have been working on this are Eric Hurst, Mark Aguirre, Mark Bliss, and Kerwin Charles. Now, Mark Aguirre, if I'm not mistaken, that's a name I've heard before. And if I'm not mistaken, because I did a lot of academic writing about MMOs my last 2 years of college.
Sounds fun.
It was. Until you start reading other people's academic opinion about video games. And this is one of the names that I'm pretty sure I'm familiar with that, with that process. And I think this guy has been on this train of trying to blame video games for society's woes for a long time. So this study is claiming that the reason that young men are working less hours than they did in 2000, because that's the comparative study.
It's 2000 to like 2004 or somewhere within there, and then the past few years.
The reason for that is because video games have just become so fucking good.
So predictable.
So I'll take a minute to take that in, that young men are working less because they'd rather play video games.
I mean, that's not wrong.
I mean, I would rather play video games than work.
Right.
But who wouldn't?
I mean, duh.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure even people who don't really care for video games would still, depending on their job, most people would rather play video games than go to work. Like, that's just...
Yeah. I mean, that seems like a kind of a no-brainer to me, right?
I would rather have fun and just sit on my couch than go to work every day. Like, duh.
Yeah.
But
I mean, maybe I could stand if you really wanted me to stand, but I really just don't want to go to work.
I can't see you standing.
So the study cites figures like by 2015, American men 31 to 55 were working about 163 fewer hours than a year. In a year than that same age group did in 2000. Men 21 to 30 were working 203 fewer hours a year. One puzzle is why the working hours for young men fell so much more than those of their older counterparts. The gap between the two groups grew by about 40 hours a year, or a full work week.
This has nothing
on
to do with
average.
video games. I've got to say. Like, what the actual fuck?
Well, when you
if they had said that people 30 to 40 are working less than the same people did when they were 20 to 30, okay, maybe I could see a correlation here. But if you're comparing 30 and 40-year-olds of the generation before us and then 30 to 40-year-olds now, they're not going to completely blame the fact that millennials have so much more debt and so much more are required to have so much more experience to even get an entry-level job, and they're not going to blame the workforce. They're going to blame video games.
Well,
they can't look inward, Nika. They have to look outward. Okay.
Here's what they're comparing is what people are doing with their free time. In young men ages 21 to 30, we've seen a statistical change from between 2004 and 2007. Your average total leisure of 61 hours were being spent with video games. And between 2012 and 2015, that's risen to 3.4, which is the most significant statistical change.
But what was
younger women didn't change at all, and older men went down by 0.1. Older women rose by 0.1, but all of that's negligible.
What was other pastimes that were high up on the list then?
Basically, people were asked to break down what they spend their time doing in a day.
Yeah,
Eating,
optional
sleeping.
sleep.
Emailing.
Right. Recreational computer time, TV, socializing, and other leisure
And
activities.
it should also be taken into consideration, too, that the time spent playing video games, if you were playing mobile games, don't count towards that because mobile games are usually played while doing something else.
Right.
And they also don't count like Facebook time or time spent on social media sites.
I feel like social media kills a lot more people, especially if you want to put women into that demographic. There's a lot more social media that's killing time.
Well, and that's one of the things that they pointed out was because, I mean, according to, I think it was Twitch, for example, 41% of women make up, the gamer population. And why they didn't seem to be affected by it as much is they posit that women play more like mobile games and they're gaming as they're doing other things as well, as opposed to sitting down and just being like, all right, Call of Duty time.
But not... Yeah. But you just talked about Twitch's demographic, though. People on Twitch aren't just playing mobile games.
That was just to point out the difference between women gamers and men gamers, like how much the demographic they make up.
So,
right. But if there are women gamers on Twitch, they're not playing mobile games.
Well, no, they're not. I didn't say that any of these articles were smart about it.
Clearly.
Well, but yeah, that's the thing, though, is that when you look at some of these other statistical changes, in younger women ages 21 to 30, you've seen a statistical rise of 1.8 for optional sleeping, eating, and personal care, which clearly means that women are just being fat hogs now.
Clearly.
It's true.
I actually have a theory on why this is only affecting men and not affecting women. I think that the women are behind this, right? Because how long now has it been that women don't get equal pay in the workforce, right? So
not very long.
That's what I'm saying. So it's not that women are working harder because they have to make more money, because men already make more by doing less work.
There we go.
If women can't make more than men or as much as men, let's just take the men out of the workforce. Then suddenly women are making the most.
That is a really not correct way of looking at it.
Okay,
because men have the luxury of working less and making more money, whereas women have to work harder to make the same amount.
Okay, fine, Nika. If you want to work all the time, fine. You can work, and I'll stay at home playing video games, standing up if you want.
But since it's talking about young men, a lot of this isn't saying that men make enough money that they can work less hours,
right?
Because if you look at the workforce,
they're trying to blame video games, and if that was the truth, they wouldn't be able to blame.
Right, like for example, stagnation of wages. So there's so many people that just can't make enough money to support themselves. They end up living with their parents, having roommates or whatnot, can't find full-time jobs, and so are you sure that maybe people are just playing video games because they have the time to?
Right. Yeah, that's sort of what I think it is that this is really reductive logic on the part of the people who are conducting the survey, because it stands to us, there's a recession. There was an entire recession that this country is actually still kind of recovering from.
Yeah, and young people are having trouble finding jobs. So what are they going to do instead? Just stare.
That's exactly what I was talking about, is that the data here doesn't account for things like baby boomers staying in jobs for 10, 15, 20 years longer than they were expected to, partially because they're having 10, 15, 20 year longer lives than they expected to 50 years ago. But at the same time, you can't ignore these Gen Xers and these baby boomers who end up sitting in these positions for 15, 20 years and don't give opportunities to anyone coming in to replace them. I've been working in fucking radio for 17 years now, and outside of Checkpoint, all I have is a part-time job. That's all I have. If I was only doing the work that I would go to the station to do, I'd be logging 25 hours a week at most. And to me, that's fucking I'm 33. I'm 33, and the best that you have for me is a part-time job. Well, that's kind of why we've done the whole thing with Checkpoint, to take some of that into our own hands and to take that responsibility into our own hands and to become entrepreneurs. And for someone like the fucking New York Times, or for this study really to draw these fucking conclusions about how, young men are dropping out of the workforce to play video games. No, how about the workforce is so fucked at the moment, that the job market is so fucked at the moment that people
they've got their data backwards. They're saying that video games are causing less work. I think less work is causing more video games.
Right. Yes, that's exactly it. That is exactly it. And it also doesn't talk about the litany of opportunities that exist around video gaming right now. You can make a livable wage off of Twitch or YouTube by just making gaming content. You can make a full-time career in media. You can launch a full-time career in media through things like Twitch and YouTube. Do not sit here and tell me that investing yourself in video games is a waste of fucking time. Not when we're talking about scholarships that you can take up, not when we're talking about professional esports teams that are hiring people on for huge fucking contracts, and not when you're talking about an esports industry that has billions of dollars being thrown around in it. I'm sorry, I don't believe it. I don't buy it for a fucking second.
But wait a minute. How come the older generations are still working? Why aren't video games affecting them?
Well, maybe it's because the entire system was set up to benefit them and people their age, and they can just navigate it because it's easy for them.
Not to mention that they can't really just suddenly drop out because they actually have families and stuff that they have to worry about.
They also know that if they quit their job, the job market's so bad they probably wouldn't find another one.
Hang on, before we, I'm sure we've got a lot more to say here, but I want to rant about these motherfuckers with families that just sit around.
Those guys, man.
Yeah. Fuck them, and because they just sit around.
Whatever, you bitch!
They sit around in positions that they don't deserve, and they just use their kid or their family as a fucking excuse not to be fired and not to be thrown out on their ear. So you have to wait. You have to sit around and wait for them to make some big fucking infraction before you can fire them, and that is so frustrating. That is so fucking frustrating.
In some cases, I may or may not know a person, but in some cases, you've developed such a close relationship with the people you work with or work for that now you feel bad actually using that infraction to do so because they have a family to take care of.
Exactly. Yeah. I that happened to me. I got passed up for another fucking promotion.
Well, maybe you should start a family.
Go put a baby in someone.
Because this guy had a fucking kid. Who cares? Who fucking cares?
So gullible.
I understand not being so quick to fire someone over that, but giving someone a promotion over someone better qualified,
way better qualified. Way better qualified. Who's doing a nationally syndicated radio show in 18 fucking markets and producing the whole fucking thing?
Out of his back pocket.
Who's doing a podcast once a month? Maybe. I think this guy. I think that's all he has to.
The other guy, you mean?
The other guy.
Yeah. Fuck that other guy.
Anyway, just going back to this study. I think that this is incredibly reductive logic, and I think that this just really sort of scapegoats. This is really, I think, just looking to scapegoat why young people in this age bracket are just not being hired for the jobs that they deserve or are qualified for. Because that, I think, is happening in a much larger and more alarming quantity, as opposed to, I'm lazy and I just feel like playing video games instead of going to work.
But if this is a problem with the job market, why aren't we seeing the same statistic relate to women? Why aren't women playing video games if they have more time?
Because they're not good at video games.
Because the women are on social media and other things that they're not counting.
Yeah, I feel like
if you count the amount of time spent on Instagram, Facebook, that kind of stuff, the women would be very
okay. So if this was flipped so that it was women, it would be that taking selfies is leading to women dropping out of the workforce.
Yes, basically. And I've actually seen.
You heard it from Nika.
Kim Kardashian does more damage than she knows.
That's the type of articles we'd be seeing. I'm pretty sure that I've seen articles like that, like the rise in narcissism and selfies is causing people to like suck at life.
Totally.
This is a rise of social media.
But again, this is more. Let's find something to blame that's not the actual economy or any job practices for why people look at work the way they do. Like again, I think about the way that I was